Garland got inside Smart, faked the pass to Allen, and he puts it up and in. Garland up ahead with Okoro, goes there. Oh, Okoro throws it down with bad intentions. Sexton works on Irving, trying to get loose. He'll fire. Hey! Knocks it down.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening live here to episode number 16 of the All Things Cavalier Podcast, whether on audio or in video form. I am your host, Brandon Lewis, alongside my esteemed co-host, Joey Snyder.
What's going on, Brandon? It does not feel like it's been that long since our last podcast. Watching a lot of Cavs. Very excited for this team. However, had a couple of hiccups. And we're jumping right into it. We're wasting zero time here. And the first thing that I got to say, what an absolute, not embarrassment, but what an absolute setback it was to lose to the Pistons, a game that we absolutely should have won. You know, as you said in that first podcast, there's a percentage of games that you should win, a percentage of games that you're probably not going to win, and then there's that middle where you're not sure, but you do your best and try to get them. That was a game that we should have won. That was a game that right now the Cavs are sitting fourth place in the East, a game and a half back of first. By no means bad at all. We've talked about this almost since the start of the season, because they've been in the same position. They need to get over that hump. That Pistons game would have put them in second place right now, half a game back, and we're sitting here going, God, why could they have not beaten the Pistons? Cade Cunningham went off, having a triple-double in that game. Any team can beat any team on any given night, and that goes for any sport. However, in the NBA, it's a little bit different. You have your 5-on-5, you have your bench players. The Cavs are a better team than the Detroit Pistons right now. The Pistons have won 12 games all year. The Cavs are sitting at 30 or 31. Excuse me. That was, in my opinion, a must-win game. Now, they came out a couple days later and pulled out a grinded-out win against the Pelicans without Darius Garland. But that Pistons game is haunting me right now. It is the bane of my existence. I can't stop thinking about it. What are your thoughts?
So, as I texted you Sunday night after that game, I said, you beat Milwaukee by 20 points, and then what do you know? You lose to Detroit. It's just, it's unbelievable, especially what made that game so frustrating is the Cavs go 15-0 to start the game. And you're like, man, we got them. This is going to be around, going to be over by halftime. And then all of a sudden, here come the Pistons. And by the end of the first quarter, they cut the lead from 15 down to 4 points. And at that moment, I said, we're going to be in for a long night. Because, once a young team like Detroit, who's not playing for really anything but pride at this point of the season, but once they smell blood, they can get you. And Cade Cunningham, the number 1 overall pick in the 2021 NBA draft, started the game 0 for 10 from the field and finished with a triple-double. Unbelievable. There are, I understand it. There are games in this league where good teams lose to bad teams occasionally. We see it all the time, but usually the good teams are able to bounce back and they don't let it happen again. And then obviously the Cavs come back Monday night in one of the weirdest games I think I've seen all season. A game that at one point, I think with a minute left in the third quarter, was 60-59. And I felt like we were watching a game in the 80s. Nobody could make a shot. Brandon Goodwin comes in, another undrafted kid. We've talked about Dean Wade. We talked about Lamar Stevens last week. Here comes another kid, and Brandon Goodwin coming off the bench, giving the Cavs 21 points. Cavs survived without Darius Garland, without Lauri Markkanen, and now here we are today. Cavaliers still in the same position as they were last week at the time of this recording, but you hope that if there's a game, like let's say the Cavs are, in April, we're down to the last week of the season. They are a game back of first place or second place, whatever place they are in, that could give them a favorable matchup in the first round of the playoffs. You just hope that Detroit game isn't the game that costs you potentially a better seed.
It was really interesting to me to watch that Detroit game because, as you said, they came out 15-0, and I'm like, wow, they're coming out like a team possessed, and then it just seems like they got full of themselves. And I hate to use that. I don't want to say, their heads got too big, but they came out like, we're gonna pound this team into the ground. And like you said, Cade Cunningham going 0 from the field forever, ended up with a triple-double. One of the things that I noticed in that game, and I've been saying this almost all year, for as good as Evan Mobley is and the superstar I think he's going to become, he needs to be more aggressive. I put that all in syllables because it needs to be emphasized. He is 7 feet tall. He can block shots almost at will. He's got a nice jumper. He needs to be more aggressive on the boards. He needs to be more aggressive on offense. It seems like he goes through the motions, but he's not embracing that role of, I am bigger than most of these people. I have a bigger wingspan. I can jump out of the building. I need to be more aggressive. He needs to start developing, and I'm saying this now, he is a young kid. He is a rookie. I get it. He needs to start developing that killer instinct right now. If he wants to be a superstar in this league, which I believe 100% that he can be, he needs to become a killer, and he's got to start right now. As far as getting back onto the topics of the Pelicans win, as you said, it was a very weird game, but not a game that we haven't seen before. We've seen the Cavs pull out a lot of grinded out, really ugly wins, and that was a very grinded out, ugly win. They were up, they were down, they came back from, I think, like 9 down or something like that, and good win. I mean, really just off the bench, playing ridiculous defense. Leading scorer with 21 points, I think, or yes, up there. Great D. He was hitting through the, just clutch threes when we needed them, keeping us in the game. Down 7, then down 4. Down 6, then down 3. He was keeping us in the game down the stretch. Lamar Stevens played some great D down the stretch as well. These bench players that we have talked about, these undrafted players, Dean Wade, Lamar Stevens, now Goodwin, it almost seems like they're the ones that are winning these grinded out ugly games for us. And I keep saying it's good experience. It's good experience. It's going to help us later on. And that's all true. But we need to start, getting back to how, we were against the Bucks a couple of games ago. We are a dominant team. Now, just, something real quick. Garland out with a back injury. I don't think it's too serious, but it's going to keep. Kept him out against the Pelicans. It's going to keep him out tonight against the Rockets. You still got Mobley. You still got Jared Allen. And something that we've talked about is they started Cedi Osman. What a weird pick to start. Is it out of necessity? Did they not want to start Rondo? Have they lost confidence in Rondo maybe a little bit? Why the start with Cedi? Because when you do that, there is no true point guard on that floor. And that to me is a little bit of an issue. I think that kind of contributed to what was a really ugly game with the Pelicans. So do you think that they make a change tonight, or do you think that they roll with Cedi Osman?
So we talked very early in the, I guess, first couple of episodes of this podcast of, hey, JB Bickerstaff and the Cavs are pushing all the right buttons as a coaching staff. And we talked about, we have rarely questioned JB's decision-making this season. For the first time Monday night against the Pelicans, I sat there and I said, what the heck is going on? Because I had a problem with them starting Cedi. Not that I don't think Cedi's a good player, not that I don't think he can start, but the way I see it is like you said, you traded for Rajon Rondo after the Ricky Rubio injury. And yes, we know they barely had to give up anything for him. They had to give up Denzel Valentine and maybe a pick here or there. I think some late second round pick, but it was really nothing. It was basically a Lakers saying, here you go, here's Rajon Rondo. Rajon Rondo, and I get it, he hasn't been out of this world great as a Cleveland Cavalier, but he's played well. He's made some key shots in some situations. Talked about the logo shot last week against the Bucks. But Rondo is a veteran, and when it comes time to play basketball, Rondo will just play, and he will find a way to make plays. And so when you bring him off the bench, at first I thought, is Rondo out and nobody's just saying anything? Because why would you bring in a guy of his caliber? And then he played, some minutes, but Goodwin, I think, and I can go back and look this up, I'm not sure. Goodwin, by the way, maybe even outmitted Rondo in that game. He had the hot hand. And so Cedi Osman, who I don't remember him ever playing point guard over the last 4 or 5 years, he did have 12 assists, which was the amazing thing. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, do the Cavs just want to? Are they obsessed with a big lineup? I mean, I just, it's funny to think about because I think Okoro was the smallest person in our lineup, and he's 6'5", 6'6". So yeah, I don't know. I was very confused by it. I think you're right. I think it disrupted the flow. Saying that though, if they started Cedi on Monday, I mean, why would you make the change if Garland's only going to be out a game or two?
Well, I think that game kind of showed the ugliness of where we're at with our, the point guard situation. And I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if, are they not high on Rondo anymore? But as we said last podcast, and folks, if you haven't, go back and check out our last podcast. It was a fantastic podcast. But something that I said was that Cedi Osman, in my opinion, is a top 20, top 30 bench player in the NBA. I think he has his best games coming off of the bench. So to me, I think for me personally, I would either start Rondo or I would start Goodwin. I think Goodwin almost played himself into potentially starting. Now, I also do, maybe like Rondo starting, Goodwin coming off the bench with Cedi and Love. But I really think Cedi has his best. He's had his best games coming off the bench, giving the Cavs that energy. And that is, to me, where he should be. So the question should be, do you start Rondo? Do you start Goodwin? That is my opinion. If they start Cedi again, we're going to roll with it. We're going to pray, pray for the best. But I don't see Cedi as a starter. I see him as that energy guy coming off the bench, giving you 15 points, 8 boards, something like that. Like you said, it was amazing. He had 12 assists, and that, great job to Cedi for the assist, but we rely on him to come off the bench to score. And I think that's why it was such a low scoring game, because his mindset, you're talking about a small forward who does not play point guard, having to completely change his mindset into being a point guard. So great job for him for the 12 assists, but I'd rather have the 15, 16, 18 points off the bench and give the assist to Rondo or Goodwin. But I will say,
to your point, real quick, because I just looked it up here, Cedi Osman in that game against New Orleans, 7 points, 3 of 16 from the field.
Right. So I think the better move is Cedi coming off the bench, because I feel like the combination of Cedi and Love off the bench is a better combo than anything. But I'll say this about Goodwin. He scored 21 points. I thought he played very, very good D. When they needed a D, they had it. Goodwin, they had it. Lamar Stevens, putting in their big, defensive players. But does Goodwin's game to you remind you a little bit of Colin Sexton?
Yes, it does.
Okay, because I'm looking at it going, man, he is not giving up that ball. Like, he is waiting and he is shooting. And I mean, thank God he did, because he was keeping us in it. But he really reminded me of Sexton. However, the one thing with Sexton, and a very small sample size this year, and we talked about it last week, where I totally flip-flopped on trading Colin Sexton, unless it's a trade that blows me away. I'm not 100% against trading him. I'm saying, unless the deal is right, I'm not 100% sold on trading Colin if we can re-sign him for the right deal. Trade blows me away for Colin Sexton. I don't see it. We talked about it. I flip-flopped. I've said I flip-flopped. I'll say it 100 times. But there were reports earlier in the season when the Cavs were 7-4, and like I said, we had a small sample size of Colin Sexton. He was playing great, better defense than we've ever seen him play. He was playing team basketball. He wasn't being selfish. And there were reports that he was coming out as a locker room leader. Ricky Rubio said it. And then there's now new reports saying that he was a locker room leader from a lot of the players. He's on the bench now. He's cheering for his teammates. He wants to be part of this winning culture that is starting here in Cleveland right now. So for me, I think that Goodwin is playing great right now. And of course, again, it seems like someone different every single night. Is it Goodwin? Is it Lamar Stevens? We talked about this again last week. What bench player is going to step up? Is Okoro going to step up as a starter? He started off the game super hot last week and then cooled down. But if you have a young that's emerging as a locker room leader, that's been averaging 20 points his career, like I said last week, if you're going to make a trade, he's the centerpiece. When teams say a good young player back, he's going to have to be that player. And if we're getting a player back, it better be a really good player that we need. It's going to help us win right now. So, with that being said, I know your stance on Colin Sexton. You don't think him and Garland's game mesh well together, but with these reports of him being, really emerging as a team leader, working his butt off to get back to this Cavs team, what are your thoughts on Colin Sexton now? Are they the same? Have they changed a little bit? I see that look in your eye like you're going to disagree with me, so I want to hear what you have to say.
So, 2 points. Number one, if you heard the broadcast on Monday, Brandon Goodwin said that, Colin Sexton and him have been working together, and Goodwin really praised Sexton. I know John Michael and AC were talking a lot about it on the broadcast, but Sexton, really being that locker room leader. And as I said last week, I don't think it's coincidence that reports started dying down about Sexton's availability. Sexton, all of a sudden, maybe it just happens, but he's back there on the bench. Him and Darius Garland are slapping and doing high fives and dancing all around. He's a really good guy. I get it. And I understand that you've got a really great player. You don't want to mess up the locker room chemistry. However, I do think Monday, and the game against Detroit showed this team does need one more scorer. Could it be Sexton? Yes, it could be. The problem is, do they have time to wait? Do you think this team feels like, you know what? We could bring back Sexton for the playoff run, but then what happens in the future? Because you have to think about the future. And Kobe Altman is going to have some tough decisions to make because, as we talked about briefly before we came on the air, Colin Sexton's contract is up at the end of this season. Darius Garland, you're going to have to pay him, at the end of next season. Okoro is coming up. Now, I know in the next year or so here is going off the book. That's going to free up some cap space. Darius Garland, though, is more than likely going to need a max deal. Jared Allen is pretty much on a max contract. So if this team is going to improve and if they think they are legit championship contenders, I just don't know if it's worth being patient with a Sexton or a Rubio contract and not making any moves, because I think generally in sports, aggressive wins And if the Cavs are blown away by an offer that Indiana gives for a Karis LeVert or, a Buddy Hield or a Gary Trent or the names that we've been talking about, I think this year specifically, because you have to take a look at the Eastern Conference, Brooklyn right now is 3.5 games back, 4 games back. If Durant keeps missing games and they keep losing, they could be falling down in the seeding. Milwaukee it seems like the Cavs, in my opinion, could defeat Milwaukee right now in a 7-game series, specifically the way we played them last week. Those are your 2 biggest threats because I don't think Miami is sustainable. I don't really think Chicago is sustainable. I think for the future, the Cavs are better off than both of those franchises. I think the Cavs have a real shot here to make a difference because you don't know what the league is going to be year to year. Who knows if James Harden leaves Brooklyn or not next year for a potential better team? Who knows what moves Miami or Chicago make or Milwaukee to upgrade or downgrade their teams? I think the Cavs are in a good spot because they're so young. But as we know, and as we've seen from the Atlanta Hawks this year, every year is not the same. As much as we love this Cavs team, who knows what next year is going to bring? I think you have to go to the present right now. And if that means getting somebody for Sexton, I agree with you. It would have to blow me away. But I think this team has to make some sort of deal come next week.
One of the things, and I want to point this out, that I hate is if you are good enough to make the playoffs, then your goal is nothing less than to win the championship.
I completely agree with you. I don't think a lot of people have that mindset. Specifically, this is what I've heard from a lot of Cavs fans this year. It's, if we make the playoffs, even if we get beat in the first round, it's a good season. Baloney! Did anybody, let me just throw this out there. Last year, did anybody really, before the season, pick the Phoenix Suns to make the NBA Finals? I don't think so. The Phoenix Suns were 2 games away from winning the NBA championship. In other sports this year, the Cincinnati Bengals won 4 games last season. They're now in the Super Bowl. The Atlanta Braves were 500 below the trade deadline. They went on to win the World Series. This thing can happen. In the NBA, it's not as, often as a football or a baseball where these wild card teams and these lower seeded teams can win the championship, but it can happen. And so you have to be aggressive. And once the Cavs get in that dance, and they must get a top 4 seed, in my opinion, at this point, there's no reason why they shouldn't. They have to go for the championship.
Yeah, if you are good enough to make the playoffs, your goal is nothing less than a championship. And I know, you hear, like you said, you players say that, but the fans are like, as long as they make the playoffs. No, not as long as they make the playoffs. If you are getting into the postseason, it means that every game is a new day. Until those 4 games are done, you have a chance, and especially here in Cleveland, we know that, being down 3-1 at one point, coming back, only team in history to come back 3-1 in the NBA Finals, win a championship. The Cavs can do that. They are a dangerous team when fully healthy, and therein lies the very, very big thing. When they are healthy, when they have Markkanen on the floor, when they have a healthy Darius Garland. Unfortunately, Rubio's out for the year. We'll see if Colin Sexton comes back, if he gets any minutes, if we don't trade him. This team has proven this year that they can beat anybody. And I think, but they have also proven that they can lose to anybody as well. But there is still half the season to go, a little less than half the season to go, that this team is still going to grow. And by the time that playoffs come around, they got some veteran presence, some guys who have won some championships. They got Kevin Love, they got Rondo. So your goal is not just to make the playoffs, it's to win the championship. But I want to say this as well, and this goes back to kind of a trade. The Cavs have a lot of assets, And there's been a lot of rumors going around that Cavs don't want to give up those assets. What are you waiting for? You have Rubio's Rubio to trade, which is a 16 and a half or $17 million off the books for a team. If a deal is there and it's a great deal for Sexton, okay. You can make a big deal for Sexton to get some offensive firepower. We need more offensive firepower. It's not a secret. We've all known it. We and you have been talking about it for I don't know how many podcasts now, that they need a shooting guard who can score. And I think Okoro has played great this year defensively. I think if he's not first, I don't think he's gonna be first team, but I think if he's not second team defense, something's wrong. The kid he can guard 1, 2, or 3, and he's locked down. But he's not a scorer. We need someone who can give us, between 16 and 20 points starting, not coming off the bench. If we can get those points from a starter, how much more dangerous are we going to be with the people we have on the bench? That's where the blowouts happen. So I get that. You have, I think, 2 first-round picks this year. You have your own, you have Milwaukee's. You have Rubio's contract. You have the injury exception from Rubio, which is worth I think $8.9 million that you can trade. If like I said, if Sexton, we have a ton of, I think we have 8 second-round picks or something stupid like that over the next few years. You have so much assets. Go and get a player to help us with that. And I know we talk about chemistry. It's got to be the right player. I'm even okay if you go out and get someone, and we talked about this last week, like a Robert Covington, someone who's been around, someone who is a do-it-all player. Robert Covington, and we talked about, we don't really have a 3-and-D guy.
No, we don't.
And Robert Covington is a 3-and-D guy, but who can also go and snap. He's very active on the boards. He's a team player. So I get where they're a little hesitant because, and this is the point, the whole circle where I'm trying to come back to. And I'm not going to jinx it. I'm not going to wood right now. You can hear it. There it is. This East is, and we've talked about this, is so close. And you have the Raptors now just surging. A lot of teams who were down and out are now not looking that bad. Charlotte 28-23, Toronto 26-23, Boston 27-25. They're all within 3.5 games of the Cavs. The Cavs, if they go on a skid, can go from almost first seed to potentially like a lottery selection in the draft, which is almost horrifying to think about. They need to stay focused. But on top of that, we do need somebody. Now, how we obtain this somebody and who that somebody is, and there's now, there's new reports coming out every single day, the Cavs don't want to give up assets, or, like we've talked about a lot of Karis LeVert. The Pacers are asking too much for him. Someone who is the Buddy Hield, has a high price tag on him. Eric Gordon,
Dragic, who I think you mentioned me. I don't remember if it was off the air or potentially on the air last week. I heard the Gordon Dragic rumor thrown out there. That would be a weird trade, because I don't think it would take much you could probably trade Rubio for Dragic straight up, because they're both expiring contracts, but it does nothing to help the Raptors. But they haven't used Dragic either. So, right. Are the Raptors really just going to kind of help Cleveland in a sense? I don't know. I think it would take probably a little bit more. You may have to give up like maybe 1 or 2 second-round picks as well. But, Dennis Schroeder's a name that's been thrown out there. Terrence Ross has been a name. There's been a lot of names. There's really only one name. The only one name that has consistently been there that I think fits
perfectly with the Cavs is Karis LeVert.
I agree. And folks, next week we're probably going to turn our podcast in order of a trade deadline special, maybe not just for the Cavs, but for other teams that, are surrounding the Cavs in the Eastern Conference, because, the trade deadline is next week. And I will be so glad when this trade deadline is over.
Oh
we can finally focus on All-Star Weekend and all of that. But to your point as well, I did want to mention this really quickly. Of course, Okoro and Mobley were both named to the Rising Stars game. They are going to represent the Rising Stars Challenge, as sophomores. I know they changed up the format a little bit this year. And then, of course, we have Jared Allen and Darius Garland, who potentially could be named All-Star Reserves when they announce the names tomorrow. So this Cavaliers team, folks, we know they have talent, and we know that other teams are up and coming, and the East is so close. Yet it feels like, and I wrote this in my article this week for Believe in Media, listen, in 10 games this month for the Cavaliers, they play 7 teams that are under 500. They would only have 3 tough games on their schedule. And if you want to call them tough, as we talked about, they could really defeat anybody. But if they do not take advantage, I think it is a real gift from the NBA. They've given the Cavaliers this week schedule this month. Not only that, but in mid to late March / early April, the Cavs only go on the road 1 or 2 times. It's a very favorable schedule down the stretch. I think out of our last 24 home game or 24 games, 16 or 17, something like that, are at home. They have a very favorable schedule down the stretch, and they need to take advantage of those games. And they need to do something here, because as much as you love those grit and grinded out games, the Milwaukee game was nice for once. Like, I don't want to have to deal with sitting there watching a game against Detroit or New Orleans that I know that they're without Darius Garland. I know that they're without marketing. But you're right. Guys like Mobley and, have to be more aggressive. They have to step up, starting with tonight against Houston. They have to get these wins, and they have to do it at least in some convincing 10 point, 9 point, something like that victory, where maybe it gets close late because you're letting the guys score in garbage time or something like that. They over the past couple weeks, it just feels like, besides the Bucks game, we haven't really seen this Cavs team play their best. And you mentioned it very early on in the show today, talking about, I don't want to say that, we got ahead of ourselves a little bit. JB Bickerstaff said it, after the game Sunday against Detroit, that, hey, this team was reading the tea leaves for 3 days. And what happens? They got way too cocky about themselves, and Detroit came in and smacked them in the mouth. Hopefully that's the opportunity for them to wake up, and let's hope that we come in here next week, Cavaliers potentially, as we've said for the last couple of weeks, we are begging this team to take over the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They just have not done it yet. To wrap up the show today, we are going to, preview here a little bit. They have a game tonight, as we know, at Houston. They do go to Charlotte on Friday, as well as on Sunday. They are at home against Indiana. I'm going to say this team goes 2-1. I think the Charlotte game on that parquet floor on Friday night, I'm going to unfortunately say that's going to be a loss. I'm going to be a little bit, pessimistic, if you will, because I don't think this team right now, especially, and again, we don't know the Garland situation, the marketing situation, if they'll be back or not. But this team has not been playing, let's be honest, besides the Bucks game, the best basketball as of late. And so until I see that, I think a nick and tough game against Charlotte. I think it's reasonable here that they will take an L potentially, and then hopefully get on a roll here as we go to the All-Star break.
So I'm going to kind of real quickly dissect just a little bit of these 3 games. They're without Garland tonight again against Houston. This is a game they have to win. They cannot lose to one of the worst teams in the league. Again, after losing to the Pistons, losing to the Rockets. It cannot happen. If they come out with a strong showing against the Rockets and win, And then if we have Garland back by the time the Hornets come around and we beat the Hornets, then I say we beat the Pacers, we're going to be 3-0. I think if they have a tough time again with the Rockets and a win or a loss, I'll put it this way. I think that this trip, for some reason in my mind, not trip, but these 3 games might be the 3 most important games in the entire season. I don't know why, but I just feel like the Cavs can go 3-0 and just as easily go 0-3. This can really easily be a very slippery slope for the Cavaliers. And you got to look, Samantas is back for Indiana, and they had a tough time with Indiana last time they played.
Yep.
I think they lost that game, didn't they? Or did they win?
I can go back and research.
I think they lost because Duarte went off that game.
Let me see here.
Another great rookie. So either way, I know that they played really, really tough, and we weren't playing almost any of their starters. All their starters had been out for most of the season.
So we won that game 108-104.
Okay, yeah, it was a real tough game. So I think if they handle their business with the Rockets, we get Garland back. I think that they're gonna go in and I think they're gonna beat the Hornets, and then I think that they're gonna be able to go in and easily handle the Pacers as well. However, I think if we struggle tonight, we're gonna struggle against the Hornets and we're gonna struggle against the Pacers. So I'm gonna say that I agree with you 2-1. I'm going to say 2-1. I believe in my heart of hearts that we can go 3-0, but I think that they really need to come out strong, blast out the Rockets, and I think if they do that, then I think that they could go 3-0. So I know it's kind of all over the place for me, but I think this is very important for them. That Pistons loss was huge, and I said it last week, every game matters from here on out. That game against the Pistons was the difference between them still being a game and a half out and in the 4th seed and being a half game back and in the 2nd seed right now. So they go out, handle your business, Cavs. We believe in you. We know you can do it. You got a phenomenal team, a great coaching staff. Go out there, go 3-0, grab that number 1 spot so we can come back next week, talk trades if we need one, and let's go. Let's let them know, baby. Let them know.
Can I ask you real quick? Does it matter the margin of victory? If they go 3-0, does it matter if they win by 1 or 2, 10 points, or do you just want to see the win?
I think they need to have not a statement win, but because you're without Garland, you're without Markkanen, you're without a lot of players tonight against the Rockets. But if you can win by 10 to 15, you're handling your business. You do that, you get Garland back. I don't think you need to blow out the Hornets. I think a win's a win. That's a very good team. And I think that from there you're riding high. I think Bickerstaff is trying his best to do a good job of keeping them as humble as possible. So I think that they'll then go into Indiana and get a good win. That might be a grinded out game because Sabonis is a heck of a player and they're getting a little healthier. I really like the Pacers bench as well. So to me, I think that you got to handle business tonight. It cannot be a close grinded out game with Houston. I think it doesn't really matter with Charlotte, and I think with Indiana again it doesn't really matter. But it starts tonight. Tonight you got to build that confidence that you are the better team without a doubt, and then you can go from there.
And hopefully our old friend Kevin Porter Jr. does not ruin our night. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you guys for listening to episode number 16. It's been unbelievable. We have just hit our 4-month stretch of doing this podcast and being a part of Believe Win Media. As always, make sure to follow us on Twitter at All Things Cavalier, where I have officially requested Twitter to give Brandon Goodwin a gift so that we can give that man some love, because the man doesn't have a gift on Twitter and he deserves one. That being said, as always, make sure to check us out on all of our podcasting platforms as well as all the written content on Believe Win Media website. Joey, you got the last word, my friend.
I can't believe it's been 4 months. It feels like we just started the other day, and just keep going and going and going. It's been a pleasure, Brandon. I can't wait to talk more. I can't wait till we can kind of put the trade deadline behind us, but I'm very excited for next week's show. We're going to be talking about all NBA, any trades made, from now until then, what is possibly down the pipeline. And Brandon, as always, you know what to do.
Woo!